Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, think about this proverb. You've heard it a million times. You are what you eat. Simple, right? We usually think, nutrition, maybe watching our weight. But what if that saying goes way, way deeper than just physical health?
Today, we're doing something pretty unique, an AI-driven deep dive. We've crunched just a massive amount of data to really unpack this proverb, our mission, to explore how what we consume shapes, well, everything. Our biology, sure, but also how we think, our culture, our society, even the planet itself. Get ready for some genuinely surprising connections. We're pulling together complex science, history, philosophy, giving you a shortcut to being really informed. Expect some aha moments that honestly might change how you look at your plate and maybe the world. We've used a whole stack of sources, including a cutting-edge AI study. Let's dig in.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? How a phrase we use so casually has such a complex backstory. Most people hear "you are what you eat" and think, okay, nutrients, calories. Pretty literal. But the origins tell a different story. I have to admit, when I first looked into this, I was surprised too. It's not just simple dietary advice. You've got these 19th century European thinkers like Brillat-Savarin in 1826 saying, "Tell me what you eat and I will tell what you are." And then Feuerbach, a bit later, 1863 or 64, stating, "Man is what he eats." Seems direct, but...
Right, but the key thing is, neither meant it purely physiologically, not just about the body. Brillat-Savarin talked about food influencing your whole state of mind and health, much broader. And Feuerbach, he stressed this tight link in human cultures between food and identity. They saw food shaping the whole person.
So food wasn't just fuel, it was like a badge, a way to signal who you were. How did that actually play out in history?
Oh, absolutely. We see it clearly way back in classical antiquity. The Greeks and Romans, for instance, they used food to draw lines. Civilized farming societies versus savage nomads. Herodotus described non-Greeks as eaters of meat and drinkers of milk, very different from the Greek ideal of bread and wine cultivation. Tacitus did something similar, describing Northern Europeans eating half-raw flesh, basically calling them uncivilized through their diet. It was a powerful cultural marker.
That's a really stark contrast. Did that kind of thinking stick around?
Definitely. You see it all through medieval travel writing. English travelers commenting on, say, Turkish food prep or drinking habits, and Ottoman travelers doing the same thing, describing Christian Europeans through their foodways. Food was tied up with status, morality, basically us versus them. And by the 19th century, it got even more intense, linking food to nationalist ideas, defining whole nations by what they ate.
Okay, so the first big takeaway here seems to be that you are what you eat started out meaning much more than just nutrition. It's always been about identity, evolving towards this really holistic view of how food shapes, well, pretty much everything about us.
Exactly. It's acknowledging that food impacts our body, yes, but also our thoughts, emotions, cultural ties, our very sense of self. It's deeply encompassing.
That really reframes it. So if food has this huge impact, how deep does it actually go? Like, right down to our genes. Let's get into the science, because this is where it gets kind of mind-bending. We're going beyond just digestion now.
We really are. Some of the latest research is showing that plant microRNAs, these are tiny genetic regulators in the plants we eat, can actually get absorbed into our bloodstream and tissues. For a long time, scientists didn't even think that was possible.
Wait, so you mean like tiny instructions from, say, broccoli could end up inside me and actually do something to my genes?
That's pretty much it. It's like the food is directly talking to your cells. There was a big study, for example, on MIR168A. It's a microRNA found in rice, cruciferous veggies, stuff like that. And they found it can actually slow down the body's production of a protein that helps clear out bad LDL cholesterol.
Whoa.
Yeah. They call it cross-kingdom regulation. Genetic material from one kingdom, plants influencing another, us. It's a huge discovery.
So our diet isn't just fuel. It's more like daily software updates for our biology.
That's a great way to put it. Our diet acts like dynamic software, constantly rewriting our epigenetic software. Right. Epigenetics is basically about which genes get turned up or down, their expression. Your genes are fixed, but how they behave isn't. And nutrition is a major driver of that. Good nutrition can even, based on some studies, slow down biological aging.
That Stanford twin study, right, where the vegan diet seemed to reduce biological age, that's incredible. But what about the flip side? If we're missing key nutrients, does that mess up the software?
That's the worry. Deficiencies in things like folate, B12, choline, zinc, vitamin D, selenium, iron, they disrupt these crucial methyl groups. Those groups are like the switches for gene expression. Mess them up, and you can have long-term issues with brain development, cognition, mental health.
And then there's this idea of transgenerational epigenetic inheritance. that sounds like what I eat could affect my kids or even grandkids.
It's an astonishing concept, but yes, the evidence is pointing that way. It suggests that the health risks and predispositions of future generations can actually be shaped by the dietary experiences of their ancestors. What you eat today could echo down the generations. It really highlights the responsibility in our choices.
Okay, so food gets down to our genes, even potentially across generations. How does it connect to our minds, our moods, how we behave?
That's all about the gut-brain axis. Think of it as a super complex two-way communication highway between your gut and your brain. It's so influential, some scientists call the gut the brain in the bowel.
Right, that feeling of butterflies in your stomach when you're nervous. It's a real connection.
It absolutely is. And get this, a huge chunk of your body's serotonin, the mood chemical, is actually produced in the gut. So the health of your gut microbiome, the bacteria living there, is directly linked to your mood, your immune system, everything.
And what about just like brain power? Does food make you sharper or foggier?
Definitely. Glucose is the brain's main fuel. Foods that release glucose slowly, the low glycemic ones, they've been shown to improve things like attention, memory, even math skills. On the other hand, lots of simple sugars give you that quick spike, then the crash, which often comes with trouble concentrating.
Ah, the dreaded afternoon slump after a sugary lunch. Makes sense. What about specific nutrients for the brain?
Well, proteins are key. They break down into amino acids like tryptophan and tyrosine, which your brain needs to make neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, vital for learning, mood, focus. And fats, especially omega-3s like DHA, are crucial for the actual structure and function of brain cells. They impact memory, attention, even vision. Deficiencies are linked to things like ADHD.
Okay, here's something from the sources that really surprised me. Diet influencing how we think, not just what we think. Cognitive biases.
Yeah, it's fascinating research. Cognitive biases are those sort of mental shortcuts or errors in thinking we all make. And studies show a link. Like a bias towards unhealthy foods can actually predict weight gain, and a bias towards healthy foods predicts the opposite. It suggests our diet can actually influence our self-control and decision-making processes at a fundamental level.
And then there's the link between diet and aggression. That feels like a huge jump, almost hard to believe at first.
It does seem extreme, but the evidence is building. High intake of dietary trans fats, DTFAs, the kind you find in a lot of fast food and processed snacks, has been linked to increased aggression. Also, deficiencies in nutrients like omega-3s, zinc, magnesium, vitamin D, they're consistently associated with more irritability, mood swings, and yes, aggression.
And blood sugar, I imagine, that whole hangry feeling.
Absolutely. Those rapid blood sugar spikes and crashes from refined carbs and sugars can really trigger mood swings and make people more prone to aggressive outbursts. When your brain's fuel supply is unstable, impulse control suffers. Plus, chronic inflammation, often driven by poor diet, is linked to worsening mood disorders and increased aggression too.
So putting it all together, it's this constant loop, isn't it? What we eat shapes our brain, our mood, our behavior, and how we feel and think influences what we choose to eat.
That's exactly it. It's a profound two-way street. Food isn't just building blocks for the body, it's shaping the mind.
Okay, we've seen the impact today, right down to our cells. But this isn't new. What if food didn't just change with us, but actually drove human evolution?
Well, think about early human history. Stone tools were a game changer. They let our ancestors access nutrient-dense raw meat, which fueled brain growth. But the real revolution was fire, cooking. It made food easier to digest, unlocked way more nutrients, killed pathogens. That freed up energy, massively contributing to the development of a large brains that define us.
And that carnivore connection idea. That sounds like evolution gave us something that later backfired.
Kind of, yeah. The hypothesis is that shifting to meat and cooking, a lower-carb diet, selected for genes related to insulin resistance. That might have been great during ice ages for storing energy. But then, fast forward to agriculture, high-carb diets. And those same genes become a liability, contributing to things like diabetes, an evolutionary mismatch.
And food wasn't just about survival, was it? It seems like it always had this huge cultural, even spiritual weight.
Oh, massively. Ancient cultures like the Indus Valley or Egypt had really distinct food traditions tied into everything. And look at major religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism. Many have long traditions of vegetarianism based on deep ethical principles like ahimsa, nonviolence. Figures like Pythagoras were advocating vegetarianism way back based on philosophy. There was this widespread understanding that food can be medicine in a really broad sense for body and spirit.
I like that term you mentioned, gastrospace. What does that capture?
Gastrospace is about the places and contexts where we eat. The family table, a community feast, the market. These aren't just locations. They're where we perform our values, our identities, through food. It's about how, where, and with whom we eat, not just what. Even when colonization brought new foods, many cultures showed amazing resilience, weaving new ingredients into their existing traditions, often keeping plant-based foundations strong.
Which brings us to more modern times. How did big shifts like the Industrial Revolution mess with our collective health?
The Industrial Revolution was a seismic shift. People moved to cities, diets changed rapidly towards more processed foods, refined grains, sugars, unhealthy fats. And you see the consequences pretty directly. Rising rates of malnutrition alongside obesity, metabolic diseases, even dental cavities skyrocketing. You can literally see this shift in analyzing ancient dental plaque. From diverse microbes and hunter-gatherers to cavity-causing bacteria becoming dominant in industrial populations.
So fast forward to today, what's the big dietary challenge we're facing right now?
It's really the dominance of ultra-processed foods. Stuff engineered for taste and shelf life, often low in nutrients. In the US, it's something like 70% of packaged foods, and over half the calories kids eat. And the science is pretty clear, linking high consumption of these foods to chronic diseases, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, cancer, obesity, even neurological issues. It's a massive public health issue.
It's so clear. Food isn't just sustenance. It's shaped our cultures, our societies, our biology, our brains. It's this deep story of coevolution.
Absolutely. Food tells the story of who we are collectively and individually, right across human history.
Let's zoom out now. How does "you are what you eat" connect to the planet? Are our food systems playing by nature's rules?
Fundamentally, nature works in cycles. Interdependence. Waste equals food is a core principle. One organism's output is another's input. For our food systems to be sustainable, they really need to align with that. Think local flows, respecting limits, recycling nutrients back into the system, not just throwing them away.
That sounds like agroecology, regenerative agriculture, trying to farm with nature.
Yes, exactly. Agroecology uses ecological principles, synergy between plants, animals, soil, water, to build resilient farms that need fewer outside inputs. And regenerative agriculture focuses on building healthy soil, keeping water clean, boosting biodiversity. It's about fitting our food production into nature's patterns, not fighting them.
Okay, let's talk about the footprint. We hear about agriculture and climate change, but the actual numbers are, well, pretty shocking.
They really are. Agriculture is responsible for somewhere between a quarter and a third of all global greenhouse gas emissions. That's huge. You've got methane from livestock, nitrous oxide from fertilizers, CO2 from cutting down forests for farmland.
Yeah.
It all adds up.
And the land use?
Staggering. About half the planet's habitable land is used for agriculture. Half. And get this, 3/4 of that agricultural land is for livestock, raising animals or growing their feed. Yet that huge area only gives us about 18% of global calories and maybe 37% of protein. It's incredibly inefficient in terms of land. And converting all that land is the single biggest driver of losing biodiversity worldwide. I mean, livestock now outweigh wild mammals by something like 15 to 1. It's a massive shift.
Wow. 15 to 1, that puts it in perspective. What about water?
Agriculture uses about 70% of all freshwater humans withdraw globally. And it's responsible for nearly 80% of the pollution causing those dead zones in oceans and lakes. That's from fertilizer runoff, creating algal blooms that suck out all the oxygen.
So the choice between meat and plants isn't just personal health, it's planetary health. I always assumed transport was the big climate killer for food.
That's a common myth. Transport, it's actually a pretty small slice of the pie, maybe 5% of food emissions overall. The type of food makes a much bigger difference. Meat and dairy, especially beef and lamb, have far higher carbon footprints than most plant-based foods. Per calorie, per gram of protein, however you measure it, the difference is really stark.
So if we want a sustainable planetary plate, what does that look like?
Well, the Eat Lancet and a big group of scientists laid out some targets for 2050. They recommended cutting global red meat consumption by over half, while more than doubling intake of nuts, fruits, vegetables, and legumes. Just making that dietary shift could cut deaths globally by up to 10% and slash food-related greenhouse gas emissions by maybe 29% to 70%. Huge potential benefits.
And we have to talk about food waste. The scale of it is just mind-boggling.
It's heartbreaking, really. Globally, nearly a third of all food produced for humans gets lost or wasted. That's about 1.3 billion tons a year. In the U.S., it's estimated around 40% of food ends up in landfills. And all that waste generates 8–10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. If food waste were a country, it'd be the third biggest emitter after the U.S. and China. Plus, rotting food in landfills produces methane, which is a really potent greenhouse gas.
So how we produce, eat, and throw away food is tied directly to the planet's health. It's all connected.
Absolutely. Tackling you are what you eat for the future means rethinking our relationship with the planet's resources and ecosystems. Things like composting, using waste for energy, better inventory management, they're all crucial pieces.
We've covered so much ground: biology, mind, culture, planet. Now let's fit into the societal and ethical side. Food security, inequality. This is where the proverb gets really sharp, doesn't it?
It really does. Not having enough nutritious food hits kids the hardest. Their brain development, school readiness. It sets them up for chronic health problems later, including obesity. And when things go wrong in society wars, pandemics, economic crises, food security is often one of the first and most devastating casualties, with effects that linger long after the crisis itself.
So if food is so basic, why isn't access equal? Why do some groups suffer more?
Because food insecurity isn't random. It tracks closely with systemic inequalities, social and economic. Globally, marginalized groups, women, small farmers, indigenous peoples, racial minorities consistently face higher rates of hunger. In the U.S., for example, Black, Latino, Native American households experience food insecurity at rates 2 to 3 times higher than white households. It mirrors broader societal injustices.
And then there's the other side of the coin: overconsumption, especially in wealthier nations. It feels like such a paradox.
It is a huge paradox. Overconsumption is basically using way more resources than we need. It's driven by all sorts of things: materialism, impulse buys, emotional spending, social media pressure, that fear of missing out, FOMO. Psychologically, it's often linked to less happiness, more anxiety. Environmentally, it chews through resources, creates waste, pollution, and widens the gap between rich and poor.
And the sources mention this fascinating pleasure paradox.
Right. We're wired to seek pleasure, including from food. But if you restrict too much, deny that pleasure completely, your body can actually react by demanding more pleasure later. It can create this powerful physiological drive to overeat. Like the source said, nutritional fears can inadvertently create metabolic realities. It's complex.
What's really concerning in these sources is the discussion about manipulation, how the food industry influences us, maybe even undermining our free will.
Yeah, the industry uses very sophisticated marketing. Packaging designed to grab your eye, celebrities you trust, messages that tap into your hopes or insecurities. A lot of it is legal, but it definitely raises questions about how much choice we really have. And then you get into unethical tactics, exploiting emotions, creating fake urgency, making overblown health claims.
And now with AI, big data, it feels like that influence could become even more powerful, more personalized.
That's the concern. AI recommendation engines can learn our preferences, sometimes better than we know them ourselves, and subtly nudge our choices. It creates an environment where it's easier to be manipulated, potentially chipping away at our autonomy without us even realizing it.
And then there's the really dark side, the weaponization of food, using it for control.
It's a grim part of history, but important to acknowledge. Food has been used deliberately to control populations. Think of slave owners withholding food. Or during Jim Crow, controlling access to food to undermine Black communities economically and socially. Even geopolitically, food power is a real thing. Nations using food aid or blockades to influence conflicts or exert pressure. It shows how basic sustenance can become a tool of power and coercion. If we're subject to all this manipulation and food can be used this way, what's the role of science in all this? I think science has a responsibility here to empower people, to provide the knowledge and maybe even the tools to see through manipulation. It needs to ensure that advances, especially technological ones, actually serve human well-being and autonomy, not just corporate interests or control. So science shouldn't just inform, it should also critically examine these systems of influence and help us navigate them, help us reclaim our agency.
Which brings us neatly to AI. It seems like it could be a double-edged sword, potentially part of the problem, but also a powerful tool for understanding and maybe solutions.
Exactly. AI is incredibly good at handling huge, complex data sets, genetics, microbiome data, metabolic markers. This opens the door for truly personalized nutrition advice, moving way beyond generic guidelines. Think AI tools for tracking what you eat, planning meals, analyzing your specific needs.
So like nutrition tailored to my exact DNA or my gut bacteria.
Precisely. Nutrigenomics uses AI to look at your genes and suggest the best foods for you. Microbiome analysis uses AI to figure out what foods will best support your unique gut bacteria, which impacts mood, immunity, everything. AI can simplify all this complex info and tailor suggestions. It can even distinguish between, say, rational appeals, thinking AI, and emotional ones, feeling AI, to help guide healthier choices more effectively.
That's pretty advanced. How could AI help on a bigger scale, like for creating healthier societies?
Yeah. Well, think about child development. AI could help integrate nutrition advice with support for nurturing environments, addressing those socioeconomic factors that impact kids' health. For public health policy, AI can analyze public opinion, track the level of processing in foods, model the impact of different policies, identify food deserts. Globally, it could monitor food supply chains, predict shortages or disruptions.
And for making farming itself more sustainable.
Huge potential there. AI powers precision farming, using just the right amount of water, fertilizer, pest control boosting yields while cutting environmental impact. It can optimize supply chains to reduce waste by predicting demand better. And it's speeding up research into sustainable protein alternatives like plant-based meats or even cultivated meats. AI can also help optimize recycling food waste, turning it into biogas or compost efficiently.
Okay, but how do we make sure AI is used for good? How do we govern it so it doesn't just amplify existing problems or create new ones?
That is the critical question. We absolutely need strong governance frameworks, rules around safety, data privacy, and critically algorithmic bias. We have to make sure AI doesn't end up reinforcing existing inequalities, say, in access to healthy food or healthcare. The goal should be AI as decision support, not replacement. Human oversight, human values have to remain central, especially when it comes to things like fairness and autonomy. And ensuring equitable access to these AI tools is vital.
Finally, let's loop back to that difficult aspect of human behavior, the source mentioned, breaking our own rules, trying to eliminate others. Can AI insights help us understand, maybe even address that?
AI can help us map the complex factors involved. Systemic inequalities fuel conflict. Cognitive biases like the meat paradox, where we like eating meat but dislike harming animals, create an internal conflict and strange justifications. AI can also help us see how manipulation, social engineering, plays into these dynamics, especially around something as fundamental as food. Ultimately, the AI insights reinforce that the solutions aren't just technological. They require patience, tolerance, actively dismantling unfair systems, fostering empathy, alongside the scientific understanding. The hope is to use all these tools to move towards a healthier, more just society and perhaps a more balanced world.
Wow. This deep dive really has taken "you are what you eat" apart. It's not just a catchy phrase, it's this incredibly deep principle. It connects our biology, our minds, our cultures, our societies, and the planet itself, from our cells right up to the global ecosystem. So the big question for you, listening right now, is this. How will you use this deeper understanding, the science behind the science of what you eat? How will you navigate your own choices? How might you contribute, even in small ways, to a healthier, fairer, more sustainable future? What new questions will you ask?
This is DigitView.